Imagine traveling to another country for a vacation or for work. You might be a student, a journalist, or a business person. Suddenly, without a clear reason, you are arrested and put in jail. This situation is what we call wrongful detention. It means a government is holding someone from another nation, not because they truly broke a law after a fair process, but for political reasons. The person becomes a pawn in a larger game between countries. This isn't like a normal arrest where someone is accused of a crime and gets to see a lawyer and go to court. It is a much more serious and frightening problem for the person and their family back home. Wrongful detention is different from a standard legal arrest. When a person commits a crime in a foreign country, they are subject to that country's laws. They should be formally charged, have access to legal counsel, and be given a fair trial. However, in cases of wrongful detention, these basic rights are often denied. The detained individual may be held incommunicado, without contact with their embassy or family. The charges, if any are presented, might be vague or completely fabricated. The goal is not justice, it is to create leverage. The country holding the person might want to force the United States to do something, like release one of their own citizens from a U.S. prison, or change a foreign policy decision. For the American citizen who is wrongfully detained, the experience is terrifying. They are trapped in a foreign legal system, often without understanding the language or the charges against them. Their health can suffer due to poor conditions in prison, and the mental stress is immense. They feel abandoned and helpless, separated from their loved ones by thousands of miles. For their family, the situation is a nightmare of uncertainty. They spend their days making desperate phone calls to government officials and their nights worrying about the safety of their loved one, often with very little information about their condition or when they might be released. This problem creates a major challenge for the United States. It puts the government in a very difficult position. On one hand, its most important duty is to protect its citizens, no matter where they are in the world. On the other hand, negotiating with a country that is essentially holding an American hostage can be very complicated. Giving in to their demands might encourage other countries to do the same thing in the future, making more Americans targets. It becomes a delicate balancing act between securing one person's freedom and protecting the safety of all citizens who travel abroad. The government must find ways to respond that are firm, but also effective. When an American is wrongfully detained, the U.S. government has several tools it can use to try and secure their release. The first and most common approach is diplomacy. This involves officials from the State Department talking directly with representatives of the foreign government. They will demand access to the detained citizen to check on their well-being, a right guaranteed by international agreements. They will also work through official and unofficial channels to argue for the person's release, presenting evidence that the detention is unjust and politically motivated. Diplomacy is often a long and quiet process, happening behind the scenes, away from the glare of media headlines. If diplomacy does not work, the United States can apply public pressure. This might involve the Secretary of State or even the President making public statements that condemn the detention. By bringing the case into the international spotlight, the U.S. government hopes to shame the other country. This can damage the detaining nation's reputation on the world stage, making it harder for them to build alliances or secure trade deals. Naming the country and calling out its actions can sometimes make the political cost of holding the American citizen too high, leading them to reconsider their position and release the individual. Another option the U.S. has is to use economic pressure. This can take many forms, from simple actions to more complex sanctions. For example, the government could cancel a planned trade meeting or suspend a small amount of foreign aid. If the situation is very serious, the U.S. could impose sanctions on specific individuals within the foreign government who are responsible for the detention. This might mean freezing their bank accounts in the United States or banning them from traveling here. The goal is to make the act of holding an American citizen painful for the people in power, giving them a personal reason to resolve the situation quickly. Before recent actions, however, these tools were not always enough. A country might decide that the political benefit of holding an American outweighs the diplomatic or economic pressure. They might believe the U.S. is not willing to take stronger action. This created a need for a more formal and powerful tool that could be used specifically in these hostage-taking situations. The government needed a clear policy that would allow it to impose significant and direct consequences on any nation, or the officials within it, that decided to use an American citizen as a political pawn. This would send a clear message that such actions will not be tolerated. To address this challenge, former President Donald Trump signed an executive order in 2020 that created a new, powerful mechanism for the U.S. government. This order, known as Executive Order 13928, explicitly allows the United States to punish foreign governments and individuals involved in the wrongful detention of American citizens. It is not just about diplomacy or public statements anymore. This order gives the president the authority to impose serious financial sanctions and travel bans on those responsible. It is a direct and forceful tool designed to raise the cost for any country that considers taking an American hostage for political gain. Let's look at a simple, made-up example to understand how this works. Imagine a journalist named Sarah who is working in a country we'll call Country X. She writes an article that is critical of its government. In response, officials from Country X's security service arrest her on false charges of spying. The U.S. government determines this is a wrongful detention. Using the new executive order, the president could identify the head of the security service and the minister who ordered the arrest. The U.S. could then freeze any assets they have in American banks and block them from traveling to the United States. This personal punishment makes them feel the consequences of their actions directly. This policy has real-world implications. It gives negotiators from the State Department a much stronger hand to play when they are trying to free a detained American. They can now go to the foreign government and say, "Release our citizen, or we are prepared to impose these specific sanctions on your leaders." This is a much more powerful message than just a simple request. It shows that the United States is serious and has a clear plan of action. The threat of personal financial ruin or international travel restrictions can be a very strong motivator for officials who might have previously thought they were immune to any consequences for their actions. The executive order also brings a new level of transparency and focus to the problem. It requires government agencies to work together to identify and track cases of wrongful detention. It also sends an unmistakable signal to every country in the world. The United States sees the act of wrongfully detaining its citizens as a hostile act, equivalent to hostage-taking, and it will respond accordingly. This policy is designed not just to resolve current cases, but also to deter future ones. The hope is that foreign governments will think twice before arresting an American on baseless charges if they know that a swift and painful response is now officially on the table. These strong policies are important for every American who travels, works, or lives outside the United States. They act as a form of protection, a clear statement that the U.S. government stands behind its citizens. When a country knows there will be a severe penalty for wrongfully detaining an American, it is less likely to take that risk. This makes the world a little bit safer for tourists, students, business people, and aid workers. It helps ensure that Americans can engage with the world without the constant fear of being used as a bargaining chip in a political dispute they have nothing to do with. This is about basic security in an interconnected world. Furthermore, these actions reinforce the importance of international law and norms of behavior. The principle that individuals should not be arrested arbitrarily and should have the right to a fair legal process is a cornerstone of modern justice. When a country engages in wrongful detention, it is violating these fundamental rules that govern how civilized nations are supposed to interact. By punishing such behavior, the United States is not just protecting its own citizens, it is also defending the international system of rules. It sends a message that these principles are not just suggestions, but are essential for peaceful relations between countries. This approach also brings hope to the families of those who are detained. For years, these families have often felt that the government's response was too slow or not strong enough. This executive order provides them with a concrete policy they can point to. It gives them confidence that the government has a powerful tool and the will to use it. Knowing that there is a mechanism to directly punish the individuals responsible for their loved one's suffering can provide a sense of empowerment and hope during an incredibly difficult time. It helps align the government's actions with the urgent pleas of its citizens for justice. In the end, standing up against wrongful detention is about more than just foreign policy. It is about human dignity. Every person has the right to freedom and justice. Using a human being as a political pawn is a deep violation of that dignity. By taking a firm stand, the United States asserts that the life and liberty of its citizens are not negotiable. This commitment to protecting individuals from being treated as objects in a state-to-state conflict is a powerful expression of national values. It demonstrates that the rights of a single person can and should be defended with the full strength of the nation,